Why don't you want to be intimate with just me?
It's just with me, the intimacy comes after you have sex with another man.
Why are you like this?
I'm a pervert. I need to take our sex life to a higher gear.
Okay, I'll think about it. But I have to pick the guy.
Dick's Deli.
Oh, you mean that guy that works there? You give me a ride on that bike sometime? The first time you saw him.
You're blocking the walkway with your bike friend.
Nowhere else to park?
One thing I know is you two love each other and are devoted to one another. And that, I respect. Salud.
Jump in the lake, anyone?
I may seem normal.
No, you don't. Seem normal at all.
Nice spies, dude. I am cuckoldom. It's a metaphor for guys whose wives cheat on them. But some men actually want their wives to have lovers. Let's put it this way. I'm a process guy.
Okay.
Honey, I know that you want this, but his soul stays in me forever. They say. I'm really flexible.
Wanna wrestle for her?
What?
I hate people!
You're not gonna like it.
Whoa. So what do you think?
About what?
Vinny,
Come in.
in case things get too crazy with Shepard, they don't work out, we have a backup plan.
A backup plan? Goodbye.
I was just going.
Okay. Right. Well, thank
Well,
you.
nice to meet you, Sean.
Yeah, you too, mate. Yeah, thank you for doing this.
You're welcome.
Well, first of all, congratulations on what, a really good film. Watched it last night with my girlfriend, so I really enjoyed it.
You're talking about my film, Target, which is available on Amazon Prime, Apple, and Vudu, right?
Well, I got mine from Amazon, so yeah, it worked out great. When did the movie start for you? When did you first come up with the concept of it?
It's very interesting. I've been in the business since I'm a kid.
Hmm.
My first professional acting job was at 21, 1976. And I've basically been doing this my whole life.
Yeah.
And then I got terribly sick during COVID, right at the beginning.
Yeah.
I got it really badly. And, when I finally, 11 days of that, the doctor wanted to check me in. I was 103 fever.
Ooh.
Yeah, I was really, I thought it was the end.
Hmm.
I thought, okay, game over. And I had a long talk with myself and I said, what do you really want to do? Because I've directed tons of theater.
Hmm.
And of course, I have my own acting school, TGW Acting Studio. And I said, I really want to make my own film.
Hmm.
So 27 drafts later, I finally had something that resembled a script. I had one entirely different cast, reading it on Zoom,
Yeah.
taking notes, and I knew I had to recast it. So I recast it with the people that you saw.
Mm-hmm.
And then I raised the money. Don't ask me how I did that because it was rather funny. I went to one friend of mine who has kind of a foundation. And he's supported me in the past with regard to financing plays that showcase my students.
Yeah.
And the last play that he financed was Love's Labour's Lost by William Shakespeare, one of his more difficult comedies. And it wasn't good. I mean, it got good.
Yeah.
But it takes a while for a play, unless you're really like a pro. And these were students.
Yeah.
So they didn't quite get it until about 2 weeks into it. And my benefactor came to see it the second weekend because that was the only time we were both in town. And it failed. And so when I wrote to him and I said, listen, Marty, I have this idea. I want to make a movie. And he's like, Tom, why would I give you money when after the last time it was not very good? And I said, I failed, right? And he said, I would say so. And I said, well, next time I'll fail better. And that got his attention. Of course, that's a line from Samuel Beckett. He says, failure, fail. Next time, fail better. And so he gave me the startup money. Then I did a GoFundMe campaign, which raised about $2,000, which was nothing. So then I went around to everybody I knew that had money, and I begged, borrowed, stole. I even sold my guitar that I played in the movie The Thing. For 60 seconds, Windows is playing the guitar. And also Bruce Springsteen has played it, and Jackson Browne has played it. It had a great history. And but the guy paid me $1,000 for it. Oh. So I was just collecting money, wherever, whenever I could, however I could. And finally I got the money together to shoot it. And it was right after COVID. So I had to hire COVID officers. I had to hire what's called an intimacy coordinator because of this sex scenes. And that was not planned for in the budget. The light, the 4K light kept going out. We had kept having to replace. So I was over budget. The line producer shoved 2 pieces of paper across my desk. One was how much I still owed, and one was how much I needed to finish the movie. Right. So I'm looking at $37,000 and $27,000 respectively, which I don't have. And this friend of mine, Steve Conca, you'll see his name in the credits of Target. He said to me, Tommy, you're going about this all the wrong way. You can't think of it like you need money and you're gonna crack up if you have to think, I have a great movie in the can. I just need finishing funds. So once I made that adjustment in my mind, I flipped it. I went, you're right. I do have a great movie. I just need finishing funds. And I did. I had to do a reshoot. After I got in the editing room, I realized there was a big hole in the plot. So I had to go back and rewrite and shoot a scene. And that was great fun because it was mostly with Jam and the crew. And then, I got friends of mine. It's a company called Fuzz on the Lens, and they do everything: camera, lighting, sound, editing. It's a whole big package. And they're a group of guys from Staten Island, and they have a truck, and they all work together, and they're just the best. So we finished the movie, and then, of course, the hard part is getting a distributor. And we finally found a distributor through John Visnaris, who has a talk show called Dead Talk Live. And then he rented out the Roxy Theater in April of 23. So we shot it in 21. We took a year to cut, edit, and score it. And I wrote all the songs. And my friend Tony Daniels produced them. I wrote them on an acoustic guitar or the piano, but he, really built them out, as you can hear when you watch the movie. And then it was released. And I'm sorry, I lost you.
No, I'm still there.
Oh, good. So then it was released, and it's at least the last time I checked IMDb, it got 8 out of 10 good reviews. So feel free to go on Amazon and write a good review for me.
I've already done that.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that, because I don't have any big studio behind me. I did all this myself. 150,000 is what it came in at the end. And I'm quite proud of it. And it's helping me to get my second film made, which is a very interesting project. I'm going to make a horror film with my friend Kelsey Grammer has signed on.
Oh, great.
To play the lead. And, it's a really good time to get him, because Frasier's doing a reboot and it's gotten good reviews. And I think that's going to take off. And that's going to make it a bit easier to raise the money, because that's like, now we're talking about millions of dollars. And so we're seeking an investor for that, for the horror film. It's called Devil's Night, K-N-I-G-H-T. And it's funny because he did a movie last year called Jesus Revolution. And this year he's going to do a movie called Devil's Night. Which one is he? The devil or Jesus? And so it was really great. A great experience. I don't think I've ever felt so satisfied artistically. And I've done, as you know, a lot of stuff, a lot of theater, a lot of Shakespeare, where I've written the music for it or co-wrote it with someone else. But this was my one chance to tell a story as I saw it. I wanted to write about something so awkward. Well, let me back up. Where it began was during the pandemic. There was a lot of radio listening to pass the time. And we have a public radio station called NPR here. And there was a story of an orphan. And 90% of kids that are adopted end up back in prison.
Right.
And the story broke my heart. This poor kid, whoever he was, said, we don't have any skills. They never cared about us to begin with. They just did it to get money from the government. And they threw us out as soon as we turned 18. And we, where are we going to go? And that story sort of grabbed my heart. And I thought, let me start with that and see where it leads me.
Yeah.
And as I said, 27, one draft was all just about the kid. Another draft was all just about the girl. And then finally I, pulled it into focus. I learned, I had gone to school after I'd been a successful actor. I'd gone back to school to get my MFA in writing from the University of Iowa, which is a very prestigious writing school in my country. It's ranked above Harvard.
Right.
And, I got a scholarship to go there and study writing, and I learned a great deal. Writing is, as Ernest Hemingway said, rewriting. And I did a lot of rewriting on the set, a lot of rewriting on the spot. Actors would be like, I'm not saying this line. Okay. Can we talk about this? But I eventually got, what I wanted, and I'm very pleased, and audiences seem to have a good laugh.
Yeah.
That's what it's for. It's meant to take a subject that people go, oh my God, you wouldn't be, you'd be amazed, because I did an interview on iHeartRadio, which is a big radio station here the other day. And there were two DJs interviewing me, and the guy's like, yeah, it's kind of, the movie was well made and it was well acted and well directed, but not my thing. I'm not into that. The girl goes, oh, really? Well, check the statistics about how many people in the US are into it. Kink. People are into many modes of sexual expression.
Yeah.
And I decided to dabble in one that I felt, except for porn, which, you know, it's not a porn movie. There's no nudity in it at all.
Yeah.
It's more the power that sex has on the mind, and that he's going through a midlife identity crisis, sexual crisis. And, you know, I thought it was, you know, ultimately dramatic and interesting material. And then we pulled it off, and John Carpenter, the great John Carpenter, the director who directed me in The Thing, sort of mentored me along the way. You know, every time I was ready to jump off a building, I'd call you, and he would talk me down off the ledge, you know. And he helped me in post as well, because I had questions about cuts and composition, and he would really reinforce one, in case anybody out there in your listening land is a filmmaker, do not show your movie to anyone until you're done with it.
Yeah.
Because everybody kept going, no, I want a copy. I want a copy. I'm like, listen, it's not even cut or colored yet.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever seen a film. A film that's not colored looks like your screen.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's all gray. I mean, it's, you know, not very terribly interesting.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, no, nobody's going to see this. Just the editor and me. And I did bring in the producers to take a look at a rough cut. And they made some suggestions, and we kept cutting and rewriting. Well, not really rewriting, but just, you know, cutting. And finally, we got it down to 90 minutes. And then I really love the fact that in the last frame, if you follow the film all the way through during the credits, the last thing you see is that Nick turns into the Bosch painting.
Yeah.
And, you know, which is hell.
Yeah.
So in a sense, the film is from the perspective, it's from the point of view of Bosch's version of hell that these people are living. Anyway, it was great fun to make, and I can't wait to make my second one. I have producer's notes on Devil's Night that I'm just about finished with. And financing appears to be forthcoming, but we'll see. And I'd like to shoot it in April if possible. You know, depending on what's going on with the strike and if we can get a waiver and so forth.
Yeah. So what's this new film about then?
Devil's Night is sort of like Stand By Me meets Hannibal Lecter meets an old TV show called All in the Family.
Oh yeah, I'm familiar with that. Yeah.
With Archie Bunker.
Yeah.
And so, Devil's Night, NIGHT, is another name for an evening called Mischief Night, or I think you guys call it All Souls Eve, maybe.
It's Halloween.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, we have Mischief. We have Mischief Night as well.
You do have Mischief Night.
Yeah. Just playing pranks on people and stuff. Yeah.
Okay. So I was going to call it Mischief Night because it's about three kids, you know, 18, that for kicks on Mischief Night, and I used to do this, throw rocks at cars passing by.
Right.
And then we'd hit one and run away. Well, these kids hit one and cause an accident.
Right.
And the woman in the passenger seat goes into the hospital in serious condition. And the driver of the car is a spawn of Satan.
Right.
And he only speaks in Shakespearean verse.
Right.
Through the whole movie. Through the whole film. He's like, I'm 22,000 years old. I only use the best language available. It's going to be like a horror film, the like of which no one has ever seen before. And Kelsey is a mate of mine. You know, we had gone to Juilliard together and stayed in touch and remained close friends. I just had breakfast with him yesterday, day before. And, you know, I'm very fortunate that I have someone like him behind me, because otherwise, unless you're making a Marvel $50 million movie and have done one before, really, it's very hard to break into the independent filmmakers racket. You know, they laugh you out of the building. They're like, are you kidding? You know, but I hope to, you know, overcome those obstacles and try to start shooting in April. That's my plan.
What do you think the biggest difference is between directing a play and a film?
Directing a play is challenging on many different levels. First of all, even under optimal conditions where everyone's being paid and has a schedule and you have a stage manager, and plays tend to be complex because the insecurity of the actor has an opportunity to fester and grow during the rehearsal process.
Right.
And your job as a director is to try to eradicate that fear and build up their esteem. And then hopefully you know what you're doing and are cognizant of the circumstances. First, you have to have a concept for a play.
Yeah.
You have to have an idea for what the play, like I took Love's Labor's Lost and I put it in Woodstock in 1968. And it was cool. All the costumes were handmade. They were all hippies. And it was interesting. And as I say, it eventually did actually work. I used all the music from, but you have to have a concept first for stage. And you have to be extremely sensitive to the actor's instrument and the camaraderie and the chemistry. And you mustn't allow a writer, if it's a new play, or a producer, if there's money involved, to get in between you as a director and the actors.
Right.
This is imperative. Otherwise, anarchy reigns and the director's on stage going, I wonder if the writer liked that choice. I wonder if the producer liked this choice. It has to be one person in charge. Now, that doesn't mean, of course, the writer has to be able to communicate his ideas, but they have to come through me. He has to come to me with his notes and say, look, I don't like this, I don't like that. And I, of course, write it down and I'm there to serve the playwright.
Yeah.
It's also very challenging with regard to staging, because many times, you know, especially I direct in smaller spaces and use large casts. So you have to really know space, how to use it. You know, you have to be almost like a choreographer.
Yeah.
And you have to know how to make that composition, how to make that picture on stage, tell the story of the scene, and have there still be enough room for everybody to get on and off in rhythm. You know, Oscar Wilde said there are 3 things that you must do to have a play be successful: pace, pace, and pace. And he's right. You can't start off that way, but you have to eventually get it to the point where the rhythm has to be so powerful that if there is a pause, a Pinter pause, then it really impacts you. Now, film is completely different because, first of all, you're still dealing with the sensitivity and the insecurity and the vulnerability of your actors. But now you have all this technical stuff, lights, camera, costumes. You have costumes on stage too, of course, but a script person for continuity. The costumes have to match when you go back and forth. The lighting has to match. There are all these technical components that if you don't have a good, you know, team around you to make sure that you have your eye on the ball. And then it's a question really of creating an atmosphere. And this is what the great directors that I've worked with have done. John Carpenter, Norman Jewison, Robert Allen Ackerman, although he was on stage. they create an atmosphere that makes you as the actor really want to please them. And I can't quite describe how one goes about that. You just have to do it with your charm and wit and charisma. And I went way overboard taking care of my actors, feeding them 3 times a day, paying them double what they were supposed to get paid according to the contract. And still, it was very difficult because shooting a movie in 3 weeks is quite challenging. You know, normally you shoot 3 2/3 pages a day on an average feature film, 4 2/3 page. We were shooting 7 and 8 pages a day.
Wow.
So we worked from early in the morning till late at night. And it really took it out of me. And I'm a rather sturdy fellow. You know, I keep myself in good shape. I work out every day. And yet those 3 weeks wore me down emotionally and physically to the point where I almost got into a car accident driving back from the set the last day. I was falling asleep because the last 2 nights I couldn't sleep at all. I was afraid I wasn't going to get it finished in time.
Yeah.
So it's very, you know, it's high stress, and I haven't dealt with the studio yet breathing down my neck, but I'm hopeful that whatever I negotiate, I maintain creative control. You know, remains to be seen, but I think if I have the right, and I have a producer named Danny Riley, who interestingly enough produced plays for me back in LA when I lived there. I had a theater company called Tomcats, and Danny was the producer, and he's gone on to become a film and television producer. So he's my guy.
Yeah.
And I think he'll protect me from a lot of, you know, the pressure from the money people should we get that far.
Right.
But it's in a completely different mindset. It is with plays, you know, you have 3.5 weeks of rehearsal. You know, you can explore, you can meander, and then return. With film, you have to know exactly what you want and yet be open to what the actors might bring. And you have to think very quickly on the spot to adapt. And I mean, it was it probably was the greatest high of my life when I would say, okay, you know, this is what I would like, and this is what I would like from you, and let's shoot it. And I'd be watching it on the monitor, and I would be like, that's exactly what I had in my mind. And it was quite rewarding, artistically fulfilling.
Were there many instances where the actors said, I don't think it should be done like this? I want, you know, either a line or a part of it. And did you take that on board? Did you change it?
It was interesting because the line was, and this is a true fact, it's a complete non sequitur. It's in the part of the film where he throws her over his shoulder and carries her up the stairs.
Oh, yeah.
So they're bantering back and forth. And as part of the banter, he says, it's China, babe. It's all China. China has it right there in the middle of the Great Wall. By 2050, China will rule the world. And this is a true fact. That's their intention. And the actor was like, I don't want to say that line. And I'm like, well, why are you waiting until the day we're shooting to tell me that you have trouble with the line? It would have been nice of you to let me know so I could have thought about it. But here I am with, you know, everybody waiting to shoot and the clock ticking, and you're, you know, telling. And he's like, well, but there's a lot of people you know, are blaming Asians for COVID, and there's all kinds. There's you don't need to look far for hatred. But he felt that it would be race baiting.
Yeah.
And he had a point. And I listened to him. And I said, okay, what else can we say? And he said, I have an idea. And he took an aria from, I think it was Figaro. And he sang that opera, a piece of that opera as he carried her up the stairs. And that ends up being funnier anyway.
Yeah.
In my mind. The fact that this orphan kid that's never had a music lesson in his life can listen to a piece of opera and copy it instantaneously. And I've actually met people like that.
Yeah.
That just have this uncanny ability to hear something once or twice and they get it.
Yeah.
Like right away, they can recreate it like an idiot savant. And I thought that would make him a more interesting street character that would have anomaly, so it worked out. And there's always issues, but in the end, as I mentioned to you, Jan Murphy was just brilliant in the movie as far as I was concerned. That's a tough part. And you can imagine that a lot of women were like, what, how dare you during this woke period of our Me Too existence, how dare you write a film where this woman ostensibly has no agency? And, I argue, what if it were switched? What if she were the one that had the idea? Would it then be chauvinistic? And in point of fact, in most of these, in the research that I did, I went around to these sex clubs and I interviewed all these people about, it's called The Lifestyle. And I'm far too shy to do anything, even though I'm an actor. I've on the TV show Oz, I had to be naked. So, but sex in that regard was difficult for me to explore. But you have that brilliant British director, Steve McQueen, who is just one of the best directors going. And I sort of got the idea from him. He made that film with Michael Fassbinder about sex addiction, which was brilliant. Mate, this guy really knows his stuff. And I thought, in the interview, he said, this is the subject nobody wants to talk about. And I said, right. Make a movie that has a subject that nobody wants to talk about. And what I found is it gets people talking about it.
Yeah.
Groups of people will watch it and have this discussion. Was it right? Was it wrong? What are the moral consequences of such a decision? And I wanted to open that up for discussion. And I think it took quite a lot of courage to go into that area. I mean, I have also other scripts. I've written 4 other scripts so that I could have made a movie about anything I wanted within reason, economic reason. But that was the subject. There's an old saying, be provocative or be forgotten.
Yeah.
If you don't come out and hit them right between the eyes from the very beginning, they're not going to watch.
Yeah.
Our sense of stimulation and satisfying all of our senses with a film or a television show, the bar has been raised so high.
Yeah.
Not just visually, but sound-wise. Sound is advanced. I look at movies I did in the 70s and I can hear the fucking background. There was leakage all over that wouldn't happen in this digital world.
Yeah.
The sound is streamlined.
Do you think comedy is really difficult to write? Because I would imagine that it's probably the hardest type of film to write, a comedy, because what you would find funny, I mean, I find this all the time with my jokes. You know, I think something's hilarious and no one else laughs. You know, they just think I'm strange. Were you worried that your film would come over that way as well?
Yeah, I have a propensity for comedy. I think because I'm such a serious person, and I have a, you know, proclivity for depression. I'm not depressed now at all, and I don't take any medication for it. I do Wim Hof breathing and exposure to the cold, and that's cured me of depression for anybody out there that suffers from it. But I have a depressive personality, you know, it's part of the tormented artistic bent, you know.
Yeah.
I'm like, alas, poor Yorick, I knew him well, you know. It's just been with me my whole life. And I think that sadness lends itself, and sorrow lend themselves to deep sincerity.
Mm.
And nothing is funnier than deep sincerity. It just is, it's a riot when somebody is actually like really impassioned about something. It's like, this guy's crazy, you know. And comedy is cruelty.
Yeah.
And with my horror film, of course, a horror film has to be suspense filled. It has to be scary. It has to have a villain. It has to have a protagonist, but it has to have humor.
Yeah.
And my comedy, my Devil's Night is really fun. I mean, it's just the fact that this guy is walking around in 2023 speaking in perfect iambic pentameter all the way throughout the script is just, no one's ever done that before.
I thought the character of Nick in Target, he was quite a complex character. So he invited his wife to get it on basically with Chip, and but at times he seemed, what's the word? He almost resentful. You know, he came over to, he sort of dominated Chip, didn't he? He sort of did that great. What's the word? Microaggressions towards him, you know? So do you think he felt insecure about the relationship as it was developing?
Well, there's an interesting twist because, like, it's his idea.
Yeah.
And, you know, I spoke to many couples and they said it was my husband's idea. I would never have done anything like this.
Yeah.
But, you know, I love him. It makes him happy. And we do things for our partners. Sometimes we'll bend, we'll be flexible, we'll try things, you know, to keep the marriage or the relationship, you know, burgeoning and flourishing. And so he initiates it. And then he chooses a guy, or she chooses a guy, I should say, because she said, I have to pick the guy.
Yeah.
That's the only rule.
Yeah.
And, you know, she goes through a couple of possibilities and she sees this young, good-looking boy, sort of a James Dean, chip on his shoulder type kid. And he ends up turning the tables and going, I dominate. I dominate. Do you understand? What I say goes. And the tables are turned. They're turned with a vengeance.
Yeah.
So this fire that Nick decided to play with ends up burning him.
Yeah.
On another level, I think that he has clearly sexual issues with regard to his own identity and he discovers that throughout the course of the story.
Yeah.
And the person, the homosexual cop that he torments, he ends up becoming. Now I don't want to give the whole story away, but I'm interested in reversals, paradox, and contradictions.
Yeah.
That's what interests me the most about humanity. You know, I'll meet somebody and they'll go, "Quit drinking, mate. I haven't had a drink in 10 years. Can I get a beer?" You know, it's like, what? Well, I thought you just said you quit drinking. You know, I'm never, ever going to see her again. I'm done with her. She's a bitch. She cheated on me. She did this to me. She took my money. And then a week later, you see them walking down the street together. This intrigues me. This is humanity. You know, this is living beauty. And as an artist, I want to exploit that.
Yeah.
To see why people are so malleable or fixed on a particular issue.
How did you find the actors for the film?
I interviewed them. You know, I've been through, Sean, I've been a professional actor, as I mentioned, since 1976. I've probably had, I'm not exaggerating, 5,000 auditions. Something like that. It has to be.
Yeah.
3-4 a week for year in and year out. You know, maybe you get 2%, 5% of the gigs. But at one time I was, you know, a little mini baby movie star in my early 20s. I guess from 21 to 31, I was kind of like a, you know, a hot property here in New York and Hollywood. I was one of 2 actors that they considered to be the most promising, myself and a great actor by the name of John Hurd, the Home Alone dad. Brilliant actor. But he and I, though he was 10 years older, he and I were the 2 like people that the studios were flying in from California to meet us to find projects for us. And I was at that position when I was a young actor. So I've had thousands of auditions, and some of them have gone great. I mean, brilliant, where the room erupts into applause, mate. And you still don't get the gig. I stood there on the phone. They stood up and applauded. A whole room. The producers, the director, the fucking this. I went, wow, that one's in the bag. I guess I'll be, you know, shooting that next week. No, they cast someone else. You're too old. And I said, you know, I really would like to go back to the days of Elia Kazan, the great American director, who was ostracized for the McCarthy hearings for naming names, which is unfortunate because there's the art and there's the man. But nonetheless, he did name names. He spilled the beans. It was ugly and a horrible blot on our country's history. And the famous lawyer stood up during the McCarthy hearings and said, "Is there no such thing as human decency? Is there no such thing as human decency left?" Because everybody was turning everybody else in. You're a communist, I'm a communist. It was quite tumultuous. But I said to myself, I'd like to hire actors by interviewing them. So I called some managers and agents that I knew. I had seen Jamie Jam Murphy in a music video and asked to have dinner with her. And I knew right away that she was what I was looking for. And then the other actors were either one of them, the guy that plays Vinny Rigatoni.
Oh, yeah.
He's funny in that. I mean, I've seen screenings where that scene steals the whole movie. They just find it hysterical. He was one of the producers of the film. And then Frankie the Razor, the faux wannabe mafia guy, he's my music producer. And so I pulled from the ranks. That's how I got my actors. It's instinct. I can tell right away.
Yeah.
You know, this actor's going to be right for this. I just know.
Yeah.
I can't always predict their compatibility or lack thereof, but yeah, I do it by interview.
Right. Okay. What were you looking for in the actors? Did you have an image in your head? Obviously, you must have had an image in your head of each character. And how did they match up to the real people in the end?
I love that question. First of all, what do you look for in the actors? Well, you have a general type, of course, you know, 20s, 50s, 30s, attractive, whatever. You have those guidelines, but there's two fundamental things I look for. Are they tough?
Yeah.
And are they smart? Because whatever you do, movie, play, TV show, it's a war out there, mate. It's landing on a beachhead. And I don't care if it's, and I've done big budget studio films and little tiny crappy films that no one's ever going to see and everything in between. It's a war out there. You have to be armed, prepared, and you have to be tough as nails in a world of wood because the conditions can get very difficult.
Yeah.
Even in optimal circumstances, you know, the conditions can be very tough. So is this actor tough enough? And then secondly, do they read?
Yeah.
That's the main thing. I search to see if they have an intellect that they're interested in developing.
Yeah.
Because if they're not smart, they're not going to be able to think quickly on the set.
Right.
Or on stage.
Yeah.
Tough and smart are the two qualities I look for in an actor.
So you've obviously worked in films for, is it 5 decades? So what did you learn in this film that you didn't know before, would you say?
I learned that I have a lot of people that really love me. I could never have done it without the love and the generosity and the compassion, the skill and friendship of the people that I put together to make the film. They carried me through some dark hours and they were really there for me, and I will cleave them to my breast with hoops of steel. I learned that I'm loved and cared for and cared about. I learned also that I'm a visionary. I don't just have a vision. I know how to execute said vision. It's been like that, you know, my whole life. I mean, ever since I was a kid, when I was a young actor, I never had any intention of being a director or being an acting teacher. Yeah. Never dawned on me. I never woke up one day and said, I have a great idea. I think it happened out of pragmatic circumstances. Yeah. I'd be doing a play or a film, and the actors would come up to me and they'd go, Tom, would you watch my scene and tell me what to do? Because perhaps the director wasn't, you know, doing his job properly or her job properly. And that's the case more often than you might imagine. And I was like, sure. And I discovered that I had this uncanny capacity to look at a scene and know exactly how it's supposed to be blocked. I know exactly how it's supposed to play. I know the tone of it. I can't explain it because I don't consider myself to be super talented. You know, I have some talents, but I have this ability to see. I know how it's supposed to be when it's finished and how the audience experiences it. And that happened, as early as 22, 23, when I was very successful making movies. People were coming to me saying, hey, I've got an audition. Would you, take a look at my monologue for me? And because I'm trained in Shakespeare from Juilliard, I was very helpful to people. And I've helped a lot of people get jobs. And then one day, I was doing American Buffalo with Al Pacino, which was a huge success. We had lines around the block. I was like, meet the Beatles, It was a tremendously successful production. And I don't know if you've watched The Sopranos.
Oh, yeah.
The guy who plays Big Pussy, Vinny Pastore, he was a club owner up in Westchester. And he came to see American Buffalo, I don't know, 10, 11 times. So he was waiting for me outside the stage door one afternoon after a matinee. And he goes, Tom, what's the guy do? He wants to be an actor. What do you do? And I said, well, you study. It's like anything else. You find a class and you study and learn a technique. And he goes, where? Where do I go to study? I said, there's a million acting schools all over New York City. This is before the internet. And he goes, well, why don't you teach me? And I said, well, I'm busy, but okay, I'll teach you. So he rented a room in a flop house on 42nd Street once a week. And I would lay him on the floor and do beginning basic acting exercises with him. It was difficult for him. He's a tough guy, a street guy.
Yeah.
Relaxing and becoming a tree just wasn't part of his vocabulary. But I got him to the point where he was ready for text. And then the next thing I knew, I had 35 students.
Right.
And I had to rent a big space to accommodate everybody. And then I realized, that I actually have a gift for this, and I've helped a lot of people, and it's helped to support my family and raise my children, put them through college and all of that, when things got slow. And I love it. I love teaching. To teach is to learn.
Yeah.
No matter how many times I go over, but soft but light through yonder window breaks. It is the east and Julie, it is the sun. No matter how many times I do that monologue, after 50 some years, I find something different in it every time.
Yeah.
Because Shakespeare was the greatest writer of them all.
Yeah.
And we are all somewhere underneath him. Even Tolstoy was intimidated by Shakespeare. As great a writer as he was, Faulkner, all of them were like, he's like what Bach is to music.
Yeah.
Even his throwaway lines. Like a wonderful play, Winter's Tale. The character says, I am a feather for each wind that blows. And, that encapsulates so much in such a brief line. That's one of thousands of lines of it. The study of Shakespeare is endless and I think essential for any actor's treatment. And that, by the way, was one of the things I've always admired about Al Pacino is, after I did Unjustice for All with him, I was invited to audition for Richard III, which he did first in Philly, and then he brought it to New York. It was a commercial disaster because it was 5 hours long. But the fact that he had the guts to do it, and then went on to do with Jeremy Irons a version of Merchant of Venice, where he played Shylock, and I thought he was just superlative as Shylock. And for a method actor, like Al to stretch and do Shakespeare. That's an artist.
Mm.
Because movie stars can just keep going, doing, from movie to movie to movie, and never. Shakespeare makes you check in at home base and go, wait a minute. I'm dealing with a master here.
Yeah.
And it really sets you to rights. It all your fears and anxieties are removed if you surrender to the language. And I don't know, I think somehow, like Mozart or Beethoven, he was just one of those, I mean, think about it, gifted people. 37 plays, 146 sonnets, and 3 lyric poems, all written by hand, and he was dead by 52.
That's a lot of work, isn't it?
Yeah, and there's very little known about it. I've read everything you can get your paws on. They don't really know.
Yeah.
They know that he spoke Latin. They know that he went to grammar school. They know that he tutored Latin. And then they think that he saw a theater company come into Stratford, the way they used to travel around, and he became enamored with them and joined up with them and, disappeared and learned the craft of acting and became an actor first and then started writing.
Yeah.
And his first plays were the histories, because that was what was in vogue. Because Marlowe had had such success with his plays, with all the wars and battle scenes. So Shakespeare became like the Steven Spielberg of his time.
Yeah.
Quite a fascinating character. I love that movie, Shakespeare in Love. And I don't believe for a second that anyone else wrote what Shakespeare wrote.
No.
And I've heard all the arguments, and I've listened to them, and I understand where they can come from. How could a yokel from Stratford know what's going on in the inner workings of the court?
Yeah.
Or how could he know about Verona for a while? I take my leave. How could he know about these things? Well, he did.
Yeah.
A, and B, you explained to me how a man that dies in 1609 and has his first folio published in 1616 by his friends collated all that material together. And it was very expensive back then to get something printed.
Yeah.
I don't know. I have some good friends, but I can't imagine people running around collating 37 plays, 147 sonnets, and 3 lyric poems just because I was a nice guy.
Right.
It doesn't add up.
No.
He had to have written. And he, of course, got in, very tight with Elizabeth, who was, I think, an extraordinary political figure of the times, because she kept England strong and the Spanish Armada, and she also created trade and peace in Ireland. I mean, she was a good ruler.
Yeah.
And yet had acculturated herself with theater, and he must have become a favorite of hers and then invited to court.
Yeah.
And that's where he picked it up.
Well, we're running out of time, I'm afraid, Thomas, but thank you so much for talking to me.
Thank you, Sean. I appreciate it. And have all your listeners go out and rent or buy Target. It's available on Amazon Prime, Apple, and Vudu. And if you like it, please write us a review, because we have no support from anyone. It's all self-generated grassroots. So that would help me out a lot. And I gratefully appreciate you asking to interview me.
Oh, well, my pleasure, mate. Well, I'll talk to you soon anyway, but thank you.
All right, keep in touch, yeah?
I will do. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, thank you, lad. Bye-bye.